we can catch up slightly. I would like to hand over to Mats from DTI to start his presentation.
Yes, hello. I hope that the sound is working. So thank you for that, and thank you for inviting me to have a small chat here. I'll try as best as possible to make it shorter so we have a chance to catch up. Quickly, who I am. I'm a former producer, as Bernd mentioned shortly, of Black Soldier Fly, and as well now I work as a business manager at DTI, focusing mainly on the Black Soldier Fly. Please. This presentation is going to be focusing a lot on my previous experience from running the company ento-connect, where I have touched more or less upon all of the areas, whether it's the reproduction, it's the rearing, it's the larvae processing or breast processing, sharing my experience and some of the pitfalls I see when you get started in this area. But as well, of course, some of DTI's. Our production was around 500 tons yearly, just so you have something to benchmark against. So quickly, the company ento-connect was located in the northern part of Denmark. It was an idea for me and my partner at Aalborg University to start valorizing waste products, waste sludge into oil, or more precisely bio-oil. One of the first things we met was that, do you want quality or do you want quantity? So do you want to focus markets, niche, low value, high value, low amount, or do you want bulk and low value of it? We quickly found out that you have to do both. So if you want to be insect producers, you both need to do a lot of volumes, but you need quality. We learned the hard way that the customers are really focused on you have stable output, that you have the same output each time. And I'll get further into this and in details how we come up with this and what kind of challenges there were in this regard. Another thing we thought in the beginning was that everything needed to be automated. But actually what we learned was that some of the steps was actually easier to do the smart manual way, at least as long as we were learning and getting more touch on how to do things. So we learned by doing and made also the whole process very, let's say, very modular in that sense, but I'll come into that later. And then maybe one of the biggest downs I can share is that we thought for many years actually, and we had a lot of big projects running on selective breeding, where we found out that actually what we were doing was not selective breeding, we were just doing adaptation. And that's really something that I would love to share and tell more about. That I think this is the area we need to focus more in detail, because there's a lot of potential, but there's not really been doing, I would say, enough on it. So definitely something we learned the hard way, that we were actually not improving the selection, but more or less just doing adaptation. So as I said, we went through the scaling all the way. We started with actually 3 kilos of larvae in 2015 and moved to the double by month. And we ended up having around 500 tons a year. And you see, this was how our crates looked like and how our stables looked. We had stables of approximately 600 square meters each. And one of the things that we learned is that you need to secure your feed. I'll come into that, because that was also one of the reasons why we failed as ento-connect. But you also need to take into account that sometimes you will have a stable half full for some reason when you're scaling. And suddenly you need to focus on putting heat into your stables instead of removing heats when it's full. So these kind of like very technical, but also low, let's say easy solutions sometimes surprises you. The way we designed our entire production was everything should be modular in the sense that we can remove steps and replace them with semi-automated solutions. And this was, of course, quite of a tedious process, but I think we learned a lot personally on that, because we have tried pumps from 5 kilos a minute to 200 kilos a minute and everything in between. And I think you learned a lot by doing that. And as well, I cannot share this enough. When it comes to feed, make sure that you secure your feed and make sure that you understand what is the KPIs and the business model of your feed. Because one of the reasons that we corrected ento-connect was because we lost our main component to biogas when the energy prices increased. And you really need to have this focused in long term, because it's so crucial for an insect production that your feed is of course cheap, but it's also something that is very usable for the insects. Yes, so I'll just go quickly into this because it's of course not that much the focus today, but I just want to share it as well. We've mainly sold to pet food, and the reason we did that was that it was the market that was more open to doing this, and legislation allowed it. As well, that we needed to have something that was easy to get started. And this is just a quick point in Europe, is that when you do fresh or frozen insects, the legislation is just to have an approval or category 3, which makes it very easy to get started. As well as something that a lot of the pet food companies can handle just from the get-go. It's similar to other products they know already. And creating a stable, nutritional, environmentally low impact product is much easier compared to, for example, working with meal and oil, which we also did. But I just think that this area is maybe something that has been overlooked a little bit. And of course, some of the things that we as well moved into was how could we treat this fresh insect. And one of the things we did was, for example, doing slurries. And chop them, whether it was wet extrusion or it was dry extrusion, and separating fats from the wet material. But there's definitely something that if in another time I'll like to elaborate a lot more on. We did that, but as well removing the chitin and stuff like that. But yeah, I just want to put it out there. And then there's the fresh, which I think is of course, there's been a lot of legislation changes since I was producing, of course. But we actually launched these pellets in 2018, where before that we did composting and sold the fresh to local farmers and made more or less nothing on it. But then we started drying it, pelletorizing and drying it again afterwards to make it stable. We need to achieve around 12% of dry matter water to be able to store it. And this product, I think, is really good. We had a really good business with this. And again, it's something, if you find it interesting, I'd like to share how we did it and what potential I think there is, because I think this is just the tip of the iceberg in regards to the fresh. We can do a lot more to valorize it, definitely, in the industry. So yeah, of course, I have to say a little bit about the company I represent as well. So DTI, what I think is awesome about DTI is this multi-angle way of approach, that we can go from everywhere, from agri-tech to environmentally. We can look at climate, energy consumption, material usage, and whatnot, and of course also the insect. Next, I'm so lucky to be a part of the core team of 5 people that are very, very enthusiastic about insects, and we work mainly in the reproduction, the production, sensing technology, and as well our newly created superior feed platform, which is also something that we work very intentionally on improving this feed, both because of previously mentioned my previous experience with the feed is very important, but I also think it's very important that we start looking into lower quality substrates for insects to make the business model more viable. So I'll just go quickly through some of the services we do. Of course, we do reproduction. Last week we did an webinar in regards to the attractants optimization we have done, and this is something that we'll like to work more on. I think there's great potential both in creating repellents and attractants for the insects to be able to locate their eggs even more, or to isolate their eggs even more. And we as well, one of the big focus at DTI right now is doing a valorization of resources. And in regards to insects, fermentation is a really, really big topic. So as I mentioned, one of the things is that you need to secure feed, but you also need to have low value feeds. One of those is with high, for example, fat content or high fibrous content, which to some extent is not usable or wanted for the insects, or at least for the black soda fly. So by doing fermentation or pre-treatment, whether it's enzymatic or it's by bacterial treatment, we are actually able to valorize these resources even more, so they're usable for the insect producers. And so far, we had great experience, for example, with the Bruce Bank grain, olive pomace, and whatnot, improving these products so they can be highly utilized in insect rearing. And I think this is really important for the insect industry as well, because this makes it more competitive compared to, for example, biogas. Good. So just quickly that we do, of course, a lot of GHG emission tests where we measure everything from ammonia to CO2 to formic acid, whatnot, and as well looking energy profile, climate profile. And as well, we have a big project called ento-power, which actually one of the other presenters, Better Insect Solution, is a part of as well, where we look into energy savings on the AVAX system. So this is definitely one of the things that we at DTI look very much forward to, is then we need to look into, let's say, bottom waste products. So this is biopulp from food waste, it's wastewater sludge treatment, it's valorization of manure, and I'm well aware of that this is not approved in any way and probably not going to be, but we are going to take a different approach to look at insects as a biofilter instead. So not in food and feed, but more using insects as a biological tool to clean our waste streams, so that we have a clean fresh, for example, we can utilize in the agriculture, but the insects should be used for other purposes, for example, like biogas, or should be used for energy or other kinds of materials. What we have seen so far is that the insects are really good at selecting the substrate and cleaning for microplastic, PFAS and so on. So it's something that we find very interesting in the future to look more into. Yes, so I'll just leave this here, and of course this is a little bit of advertisement, but we are at DTI, we are doing a lot of projects, both ongoing, but also some of them are already done and finished, you can find on our homepage. But if there's anything in regards to what I mentioned here or on the list here that is interesting, please reach out, and we always look forward to creating some new interesting R&D projects, definitely. And I am done, and I think I was a little bit below time. Hopefully, is my feeling.